Hi, welcome to another episode of Tea with Tara, Conversations about Writing. Today's guest is Dr. Beatriz Rivera-Barnes. Dr. Barnes is an associate professor of Spanish and Latin American and Iberian culture studies at Penn State University. Her career also includes journalism. She was a reporter for the Jersey Journal and correspondent for the Poughkeepsie Journal in Poughkeepsie, New York. She was also a reporter for the Daily Freeman in Kingston, New York. She has written several novels, including Midnight Sandwiches, At the Mariposa Express, Playing with Light, Do Not Pass Go, When a Tree Falls, and Museum of Broken Relationships. She is also the author of numerous short stories. Her work has been reviewed in publications such as Publisher Weekly, the Library Journal, Kirkus Reviews, the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, the Denver Post, the Miami Herald, the New York Times, the Jersey Journal, and many others. Dr. Barnes was a 2007 recipient of the International Latino Book Award for the 2006 novel Do Not Pass Go, and a finalist in 2007's Patterson Fiction Prize for the novel Do Not Pass Go. She also has a BA in philosophy, an MA in philosophy, a doctorate in French and comparative literature, and a PhD in Spanish literature. So I'm so excited to be talking to her, and we are going to be joined by Dr. Barnes in just a few moments. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Tea with Tara, Conversations about Writing, and we are now joined by Dr. Beatriz Rivera-Barnes. Dr. Barnes, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So the first question I want to start with is, what is your earliest memory of wanting to be a writer?
I think I was around 11 years old, and I wanted to, I had a great summer, just a wonderful summer. Nothing in particular, but as a child can have a great summer. That if you talk about it, it's no big deal, being around a pool with cousins. But I wanted to, come September, I wanted to replay that image. There was an image, there were these moments that I wanted to recreate in order not to lose, so as not to lose them. So I remember I started on one of those, writing a novel on one of those steno pads.
Right.
That you don't open like this, but you open like this. I remember I started writing, and then, well, it didn't go anywhere.
So you were also a reporter for many years, and you're also a professor. So you do all types of writing, from academic writing, you were a reporter, you did journalism, and then of course, creative writing. What is your favorite type of writing, and which presents the most challenges, do you think?
I think that they're all creative, really, and they all present different challenges. They are all creative, because I find that I personally find that I'm very creative with my academic writing, and sometimes I take it a little bit out of the norms of academic writing that oftentimes annoys very strict academics. You're not supposed to be funny. Once in a while, I'm funny. In academic writing, that's supposed to be the most boring thing in the world. So how could somebody get a chuckle out of anything academic? And I have different, the titles, I don't want to have boring titles. I want titles that will attract all different kinds of people. I think that academic writing, if it stays the way it is right now, will die.
Right.
Nobody's going to read it. Who do we cite? It's the most interesting people who are outside of the norm. It's not just good homework.
Do you also journal? Do you like to journal your thoughts?
I did for many, many years. And when I'm traveling, I usually do, because I always have this time to myself. And when you're traveling, you wait a lot. So that's a good, and then I like to sit in cafes or in bars or whatever. And so but I used to journal. For years, I did it every day. And also, I don't write that much anymore. Write like with my hand.
Right.
My hand gets tired.
Yeah, mine too. I'm much better at typing.
But I used to be able to write. I mean, when I was studying philosophy in Paris, our exams were essays, and you would have to sit there through 4 hours writing an essay. You would have a question, and you had a prompt, and I would write all the time, and write and write and write, and then my hand does get tired now. It just.
Do you find writing to be cathartic?
Sometimes not. It's so impossible. There's an impossibility of writing and an impossibility of not writing. So I think if you, let's say you play the piano, I find maybe the grass is greener. If let's say you play the piano, you at least you own something and you make progress with you learning this piece. And today you're playing it like this, tomorrow you're better, maybe the day after you're not as good, but still the writing, you never own anything.
Right. There's always something to learn, right? You don't ever master it. It's not like getting a promotion till you get to the highest step. There really never is a high step. You just keep going.
Right. You never own it. You can't perform it. It's not, oh, Tara, show me how, right now in front of me, show me how well you write. Well, I mean, if I were to sketch, I could perhaps show you how well I could sketch. I could do a fast etching, but the writing is so, I can't think of the word. It's just, it doesn't care about you. You have to be at its altar.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Do you ever have writer's block?
I can't say I write really slowly. I edit a lot. So most of I don't, unless I'm journaling, I can just write. But if I'm writing an essay or if I'm writing a novel, most of it is rewriting. I feel that I rewrite more than I write. I'm just honing sentences. And from this sentence comes another sentence. So I think it's hard to have writer's block. Although I have to say that I've been wanting to write an environmental novel, and something has been keeping me from it. I don't know if that's writer's block. I wanted to write a novel set in Key West with some characters in this fragile environment. I find that I don't belong to Key West, nor does Key West belong to me. So for some reason, I can't get down to writing it.
That's an interesting topic, though. I would like to see that. I would love to read that.
I don't think it'll ever get written because maybe that is writer's block, but because I feel I can't write about the place, that other people own it.
So where do you get your ideas from? Your last book, Museum of Broken Relationships?
Mm-hmm.
Where did this idea come from for this novel?
Well, first of all, there is an actual museum of broken relationships in Zagreb, and it's what's left behind after a relationship ends. And in this museum, it's a traveling museum too, and it's a live museum, so you can send things in about your broken relationship. Mm-hmm. So if what's left behind is one shoe, you can send that shoe, and they'll either exhibit it or not. So I was thinking of a book and all relationships end, right, whether it be death or for whatever reason. It doesn't have to, because sometimes people think of broken relationships just as romantic relationships with people breaking up, but no, all relationships will come to an end. Death will put a relationship, just like it just makes me think when Jean-Paul Sartre died, Simone de Beauvoir, who was his lifetime companion, said, "Your death separates us. Mine will not reunite us, but I was glad that we were able to spend some time together."
Oh, that is nice.
Mhm.
Those
So that was this idea of doing a saga, and there are these. Well, you know a lot about that. You suffered a lot of loss,
right.
hmm and you spend this time with people, and then there is this division, this separation that's very violent, and you like to have whatever's left behind from your very important relationships. You have had a lot of a lot of loss.
Yeah, and loss is so universal. I mean, it's something everybody could relate to.
I think so, because I mean, there's this song that Jiro, and he says, "To all the things I lost along the way," where we're always losing things.
Absolutely.
Right
So,
now, I'm in a moment when I'm trying to get rid of things too, but not
oh, yeah,
people, but
things, me too. You have too much stuff. Is that what you mean?
yeah. Oh no, and that's cathartic. Actually, I find that too. I've gotten rid of a lot of books. I think I'm going to take some to the library if they want them. They'll probably think I'm dumping or something.
So what comes to you first when you're thinking of a novel? Are you thinking of the plot first, or do you see the characters first?
It's more a sensation. It's more uh, an image and a feeling. A lot of that book, Museum of Broken Relationships, a lot of it I think of, and I mean, I never lived in Moorish Spain, but a lot of this fantasies about Granada and these cities with three cultures, the Jewish and Islamic and Catholic, and so this history. So it's more of a sensation of, it's almost a type of uh, it's this place you're in all of a sudden that's untouchable, and somehow you want to reach it. So you want to step into this world and keep on living it.
And
Mhm.
are any of your books autobiographical? Are any of them?
I think that every book is autobiographical. You don't, what do you write about? I mean, some books are more personal. Some people write more, and it's outright autobiographical, but I mean, every character is drawn from probably not one character, but several, because I think that most characters in novels require several characters, unless there's some real characters that are just larger than life, and those should be broken into several. Some people that are real are unbelievable, so you have to break them into several characters.
Right.
But yes, I mean, yes, everything is personal, of course. If not, why would I be talking about it?
Do you think the author should be connected to the work? In other words, I remember when I was an English major, some of the professors believed that once the author writes the book, the author is dead. It's all about the work itself rather than the writer. And then when I wrote my novel, I had so many people asking me, who is this character based on? Who is that character? How much of it is your life? Do you think that's fair to the writer?
Well, the thing is that you could one day, everything can disappear and somebody discovers this book, and maybe there won't be any opportunity to question the writer. As Michelangelo said, a good statue should be able to roll down a mountain without losing anything essential. So a book without a writer, a book should be able to live without a writer, because I find that there's some books, really, there's a lot about the writer that's I'm more interested. Under the Volcano, Malcolm Lowry, for example. I was more interested in him than in what he wrote.
Okay, yeah, and that's what I was about to say, because
I was much more interested in his other some other books. I mean, like Hemingway's life is interesting, but you can read. I mean, whether or not some people hate Hemingway, but whether or not you know about Hemingway, you can still. A lot of poets, I think, that when the drama of their lives come in, however, take Sylvia Plath, you can just read her poetry and not know anything about her.
right.
And that's fine. Well, then we add the gossip of her life. So you can, and some people just like that more than really her poetry.
Yeah, and I find like sometimes though people become too engrossed in what the writer did and who they were. And I admit I love biographies. I read them all the time. I love to read about a writer's life. But if I'm reading their work, for instance, when I read Shakespeare sonnets, so many people, literary critics are always saying, okay, some of these sonnets were addressed to men. Why? Is he gay? Is Willa Cather gay? I mean, is that what we should be concerned about when we're reading their work? Worry about what's addressed.
Well, you should be able to read their work without that being important, without that being essential.
Right.
And yeah, and I think that sometimes some very confessional writers, well, if you don't have the confession, so it's not, oh, really, you wrote that book? Did you really have that many boyfriends? Yeah. Oh, wow. So you can do that, but the book itself can be interesting without you being around. You could be long dead and nobody knows if you had that many affairs or if you killed that many people. Or
What do you think about literary critics? I mean, what when they critique a work, do you think that they're fair all the time? Because again, I've heard of some writers who have said, where are they coming up with this analysis of my, where are
that
they
makes me think of T.S. Eliot. Somebody was critiquing, and he was still alive, the love story of J. Alfred Prufrock, and what a literary critic said, here he is like staring into the eyes of a rat. And T.S. Eliot said, I don't think I ever stared into the eyes of a rat. So, I mean, they're at freedom, and sometimes I think they can sometimes find things in a book that the author didn't know about.
Right.
Is the author totally in control of everything that he is writing about? I mean, a lot of things could be part of another level of consciousness. So that's interesting to see, but not always. Most of the time, the author is dead by the time they're being critiqued to that extent. So the author can't really.
And out of all the characters that you've written about, are there any that you relate to? Any of your characters you relate to the most?
I think I relate to every again, I don't think I would have written about anybody I don't relate to.
Right.
Mm-hmm. The villains, the nice ones, the not so nice ones, the rich, the poor, the intelligent, the very stupid. I mean, no, they're all the clown ones. I relate to all of them. If not, I don't see why we would create a character if I don't even would maybe a vengeance character, but even that, let's say you want to create a character because you hate this type of person. Well, in this hatred, there is enough love to spend time hating that character and creating it.
Right, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
And how long?
You create villains,
Yeah. And how long does it take you to write a novel, or does it vary?
It just varies. m- my first collection of short stories that's not here uh, took about a year and a half. My first collection, it was called African Passions. It's about like 11 short stories. And that took a year and a half. My first novel took about a year actually. This is Midnight Sandwiches. This is my first novel. And I was living in New Jersey in a Hispanic neighborhood and very inspired. So that it was constant writing, really writing every day and every morning, especially every morning. I used to, for many years, I would not give my mornings up for anything. I've changed now. I find I can still write. Before I found that I couldn't write unless I wrote first thing in the morning.
Right. Yeah, that's how I am.
It's hard. It makes it easier.
Yeah.
If you start the first thing you do, you write, it keeps on going.
And how about the research process? What is that like for you? Do you find it tedious to do research, or do you enjoy that process?
Oh no, I love research. I find like I'm like a spy. I'm like a detective. I love, and again, all kinds of research. I like researching from my academic papers, and I love researching, and I've researched for every novel. For example, I have this other novel. It's called When a Tree Falls.
Right.
And it's based on a true story of a politician, a woman politician, who ended up in jail for corruption and getting involved, and it was I interviewed her a lot when I was a reporter. So I mean that comes from real life, of course, that I had to create the characters, because you just have these stories that are flat. So all of a sudden, she got involved with a psychiatrist who, because of him, she ended up in jail. So that was her falling as a tree, falling from high. Again, was it? I'm not her. It's not personal like that, but for some reason, I felt it was important to write about somebody's downfall from high.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I was curious about all these. I wanted to create all these characters around. And
so who were some of the writers that inspired you growing up, or what writers do you look up to now?
Well, I think that one of the first, being like 11 or 12 years old, I adored Isaac Bashevis Singer. Do you know him?
No, I've not read any.
He used to write in Yiddish, and then it was translated into English. He died, I think, maybe 1972. And he was from Poland and then went to Miami Beach. And there were these, I'll get you a copy. These stories are fantastic.
Yeah, I'd like to read them.
And there are a lot of dibooks and witches and goblins and demons in his stories. And once you start reading it, you can't stop. You really can't stop. But he also had really long novels like the Muscat family. That was the whole saga of a family leaving Poland during the war and moving to the United States, moving to New York, moving to Miami Beach. So he was one of these writers. I think I'm like 12 years old, and all I want to do is get back to my book. You know, where everything is like, oh my God, I have to go to math class. I have to do this.
So you were a voracious reader growing up then.
I was a voracious reader, which I'm not anymore. See, my eyes get tired.
Oh, okay. So I was about to ask you, who are you reading now? Anything you're reading?
Well, actually, I am reading right now. I am reading a French writer. I'm rereading. I don't know. I can't get interested in things. I'm rereading. It's a French writer called Émile Zola. And he wrote like, I think it's like 30 novels that they're all interconnected. He's a naturalist. So he's showing, this one is called Au Bonheur des Dames, which is the name of a department store, To the Happiness of Women. So it's about department stores taking over Paris and harming the little stores, and also about compulsive shoppers.
Oh,
We're talking about the 19th century, these women who couldn't stop shopping.
yeah.
And so that
It
already
sounds familiar, right?
So I'm rereading him now. These novels are very long. They're all like 300, 400 pages. He would write like Dickens for the newspaper, so it would appear every day. So people would look forward to this. So I read him before. I think I read most of it. Maybe he had part of it about railroad workers that interested me a little less. I really wasn't interested in the lives of railroad workers, which I should be, but I just wasn't interested. And a lot of the French because, I went to boarding school in Switzerland. I went to Switzerland when I was 12, and then I graduated from high school in Switzerland. And then I went to France, and I lived in France for 12 years. So a lot of the influence was very French culturally. So, I mean, the French literature was really the first literature I studied in depth. It was later that I discovered the American writers like Faulkner, and but it was the base was French literature.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. So,
Did you have any mentors in your personal life who inspired you about writing growing up? Or for that matter, did you have any naysayers who said, why do you want to be a writer?
I had a lot of professors who were mentors. I mean, from Switzerland, my philosophy and literature professor was quite a mentor. I wish I had seen him again. He's dead now. When I went to my Swiss high school reunion, the 100th, not of graduation, but of the school, they told me he was dead. He smoked a lot, but he was wonderful in urging me and pushing me to write. And then other philosophy professors I had were quite an inspiration. It's these professors who speak, and you're sitting there listening. It's just
They ignite the spark.
yes. And then you're thinking, they're giving you ideas.
Right.
I mean, for naysayers, I mean, I have had comments once in a while because I do have 3 languages, which means that in every language that I have, there's a flaw. Usually, if you write, the best thing is just to have one language, because there is interference. There is, no matter how much, and they are, all 3 are native languages, but there is interference. Once in a while, the wires get crossed. So I do have that flaw of interference. And sometimes I'll write a sentence in English that's not totally English, that there's interference from the Spanish or the French.
So how do you see yourself? Are you a professor who writes, or are you first a writer who teaches?
I'm a writer who teaches, definitely.
And how did you get into the teaching? How did that happen?
Probably fell into it. Stumbled and fell. It's kind of the way my life went. I started out, I translated for the UN. I didn't like doing that. I did odd jobs. I really liked writing as a reporter. But oftentimes since I spoke, when I got to New York and I quit the UN, I spoke French and Spanish. So what was the easiest thing was to go teach French and Spanish. And then before you know it, so I was teaching in companies and banks. And before you know it, some people said, well, why don't you continue with your PhD? I mean, you're kind of a scholar, you're a scholar. So little by little, I decided to, so then I became an adjunct in Fordham University. And while I was started doing the PhD. And well, first I started doing the PhD in France. Then I decided, well, French literature, nobody's going to hire anybody for French literature. So then I did that till all but the dissertation, and then started again with the Spanish.
Do you have any students that ever come up to you and ask you for advice on writing?
For advice on writing, no. I have a lot of students who just ask me for advice on life in general, or for letters of recommendation. And I've had quite a few that have gone to become professors, so that's nice. That's always.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
That's always very flattering.
Yeah. So what would be your advice to aspiring writers? What would you say to someone who did come to you and said, I want to be a writer? What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, you have to write. Okay. It's not about wanting to be a writer. Right. And then you are a writer. That you, what does I want to be a writer mean? That you want to write next week, or that you want to write one of these days? Does it mean that you want to be very successful? What does it mean? Because it can mean a lot of things. I want to be a writer. I mean, I can say I want to be an actress. Okay. If I were taking acting lessons every day and practicing, that would be one thing. If I'm saying, I just want to be an actress. Okay.
But you have to practice your art.
Yeah, you have to.
Every day.
And you write every day. You are a writer already. Mm-hmm.
Right. And that was another question. When did you consider yourself a writer? But I think you just answered it. You don't have to be published to be a writer. Correct?
No, you don't have to, you don't have to get the Nobel Prize. You don't have to, so what does it mean? What does that mean for a person to say, I want to be a writer? Does it mean you want to write copy for an advertising agency? Does it mean you want to write, romance novels and make a living out of that, which is, I mean, that's being a writer too. Everything is, so some days I consider myself more of a writer than others.
Right.
Oh no, I can't write.
Do you have any writing quirks? Like, in other words, do you need music on when you write, or do you have to write in cafes? Do you find that to be?
I like journaling in cafes. I don't see myself journaling at home anymore. I love journaling in bars or in cafes. And that's why I like journaling in Europe, because it's harder here. We do have some places where you can go sit, like where you go there in Scranton, you can go sit there. And,
oh yeah, Northern Light. I go there.
Northern Light. But most of the places just want you out.
Right.
Right. You can't just sit there.
You think?
I mean, there's some.
No, go ahead.
There's some places in Europe you can just sit there and sit all day. In State College, there's one too. There's a bookstore. You would love that bookstore if ever you get to State College. It's called Webster's. And you can just have your table, sit there all day and not look at all their books. They have tons and tons and tons of books. You'd love it if you ever go that way.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Are you currently working on anything that you can share?
Yeah, well, I'm working on something academic that is, I'm right now, the paper I'm doing right now is portraits of women in early 20th century Latin American novels of extraction. A lot of these novels are non-canonical because they really denounced oil extraction, rubber extraction, gold extraction, sheep herding. So I'm looking, so what is the role of women in these novels of extraction?
Oh, that's interesting.
And so a lot of what is the role, the native woman, okay, let's say, I mean, a lot of them are very brutal, they're very unkind. I mean, one novel starts a, a doctor who's there visiting, he's saying, are there any good-looking indigenous women? No, so I mean, so what is it in this men's world of extraction, especially oil? I mean,
Yeah.
you have these different prototypes of women. So I'm working on that paper. I'm thinking of another book, New Horizons in Hispanic Eco-Criticisms. So, and again, I wanted, I was thinking of this environmental novel, but maybe I'll set it somewhere else.
Do you
Maybe
still do short stories?
I have a few. I haven't written any short stories in a while. Sometimes short stories become a novel. Sometimes I'll do 3 short stories. I mean, like for Museum of Broken Relationships, started with short stories. And then I realized that I was just writing around, that it was going to be a novel. So yes, in a way, because I like the idea of a chapter resembling a short story, going like straight, like as Borges says, an arrow straight to its target. So I try to make each chapter a short story.
Right.
Mhm.
And
But sometimes they end up as a novel.
And if you could sit down with any one writer of your choosing, living or dead, who would that writer be? What do you think? What do you think you'd want to know from that person?
Oh wow, that's a tough one. No, because I mean, there's so many writers that I mean, like anyway, I'm doing I'm reading Emile Zola now. I would ask him, were you really murdered? Okay. I there's just so many writers I would or would not. There's actually, I can think of a lot that I wouldn't want to speak to. I would prefer not to. Like Paul Bowles, Paul Bowles, Bowles.
And why wouldn't you want to?
It's you should read him. You'll know why. So maybe not. Maybe I don't want to speak to anybody.
How do you usually celebrate?
It's made me a very solitary person.
How do you usually celebrate one of your published books? When your books get published, do you go to dinner? Do you celebrate somehow?
Yeah, but I'm always celebrating. Sometimes we just say, okay,
You don't need the book, you just celebrate.
Celebratory weekend. So, we celebrate. And
So
my daughter just got her master's, so we've been celebrating for a month.
Is she also a writer?
Yes.
Oh, good.
I mean, she's going for her PhD in Hispanic literature, but she's scared about jobs, of course.
Right.
So she was accepted into law school, so it's just hard to decide. Again, going for writing and saying, well, I want to write for a living, it's a big decision. It's a big decision, and it's not always going to happen.
Right.
And it's not easy everyday life is
not at all. No.
I mean, you have to, unless somebody's subsidizing you or you have a trust fund,
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. You have to do something on the side. You got to pay the bills.
yeah. Hmm.
So where could we find your books? Anyone watching this who wants to find one of your novels?
Amazon, go to Amazon, Beatriz Rivera. I'm either Beatriz Rivera for the creative writing or Beatriz Rivera-Barnes for the academic. So I have a double life.
We all do, right? As writers, for two people,
Yeah,
sometimes
or
multiple
maybe
people.
triple or
Well, Dr. Barnes, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I want to thank you so much. This has been such
thank
a
you.
wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much. That was very nice. Thank you,
And
Tara.
thank you for
Mhm.
being here.
I will send you the Isaac Bashevis singer. I'll message you
I
for
look
your address.
forward to it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tara.
Take care. So that concludes another episode of Tea with Tara, Conversations About Writing. I want to thank my very special guest, Dr. Beatriz Rivera-Barnes. I thought it was a fantastic conversation. Loved learning about her perspective on writing and her journey as a writer and as a professor. So as always, if you have a story inside of you dying to get out, that's a sure sign that you might be a writer. See you next time.